Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name's Demascus, and today I'm going to be going over some Death Knight macros. Now, for those of you that don't know what a macro is, essentially Blizzard has designed this in-game system that allows you to string multiple commands together so that with the click of a single button, your character can initiate multiple attacks or spam something in chat, etc. Uh, what I'm going to be going over is just some basic macros you can use if you have a Death Knight that come in handy in both PvP and PvE. Now, the first one that we're going to go over is a macro that I've just called interrupt. To create a macro, you go into your options, macros, and there you go. I've already got the page up with my character specific macros. Now, interrupt really comes in handy for PvP, just because things tend to be hectic and you really don't have time to be thinking about anything. You just got to be quick on your feet. This is actually one of probably the most complicated macro that I'll be showing you, but it's still pretty simple. Now, if you look over here, the command is /cast open brackets modify :shift close brackets mind freeze strangulate. Now, it's really important that you're spelling the names of the attacks exactly the way that they appear in your spell book. Mind freeze has the capital M, the capital F, strangulate has the capital S. If you don't get every single one of these details perfectly, when you press the button, the command isn't going to know what to do. Another tip with macros is don't try to string more than two abilities together at one time, because that can definitely increase some lag and seriously affect your DPS as the fight continues. Now, what this modify shift command does is DKs have two interrupts that they have. As a blood elf, I have a third, but not everyone's going to be a blood elf. Mind freeze requires runic power in order to pop off, and strangulate requires a blood rune. So pretty much what this does is the macro attempts to cast mind freeze, but if you don't have the runic power for mind freeze, it'll attempt to cast strangulate. So like I said, it's a great little macro to have, especially in PvP combat. In PvE, I don't use it just because I need to be a little more aware as to what runes I'm going to have up instinctually. That way I know exactly when to pop off my attacks and maximize my DPS. But playstyle is really going to determine whether or not this is going to be a useful macro for you. The next two macros that I'm going to go over are essentially the same thing. I call this one Blood Reaver, and I call the other one Iron Reaver. And pretty much what it does is it casts Blood Tap, and then it casts either Death Strike or Obliterate. Now, Obliterate's your number one damage dealer, so what this does is, say you don't have any runes up, it'll automatically use your Blood Tap, which will hopefully give you that additional rune that you need to be able to pop off and obliterate when you've got no attacks you can cast, and you just don't want to have that 3 to 5 second lag time that you might have in between attacks sometimes. And Iron Reaver is kind of what we call an oh shit button. Oh god, I'm about to die, so let me Blood Tap and Death Strike to regain some health. Both of these are really good in PvP again. For PvE purposes, they definitely come in handy. So if you're a Death Knight, I'd recommend having one or both of these up on your bars. The next one that we're going to go over is also an oh shit button. I just call it DK Shield to keep it simple. And what it does is it activates your anti-magic shell and your icebound fortitude. These are both instant casts, so they work great together. The reason I put anti-magic shield up first is because these two attacks have different cooldowns. One of them is a 3-minute cooldown, the other one is a 45-second cooldown. This way, the game will automatically try to cast your anti-magic shell first, rather than try to pop off your Icebound Fortitude, and if you don't have the resources to pop it off, it'll create a second to second and a half lag as it tries to cast a spell that it can't, and then it'll pop off your anti-magic shell. Because this is a no shit button, you want to be able to defend yourself against either magic or physical attacks immediately, which is why it's important to put anti-magic shell up first. That way, even during that 1 to 1.5 second lag that you'll have, because you can't cast Icebound Fortitude at the time, well, you'll still have your anti-magic shell up. And some protection is better than no protection. The next one that I'm going to show you I call Plague Grip. Also very simple. Really comes in handy for PvP. For PvE purposes, not so much, just because as the DPS, you're never going to be trying to aggro the boss itself. But it's great in PvP because what it'll do is it'll cast your Death Grip and it'll pull your enemies straight towards you, and then it'll cast your Outbreak to put your diseases up on them. So instead of having to click twice, you click once and you can move straight on into wailing on your opponent. Then the last macro that I'll be showing is called Frost Ghoul. This one is a Frost DK specific macro. And what it'll do is it'll cast your Pillar of Frost, which is a buff that increases your strength by 20% by 15 seconds, so it's great. And then it'll cast your Raised Dead, which will summon your Ghoul Pet. Now, the reason that you want to link these two abilities together is because your Ghoul takes a snapshot of whatever your stats are when it's created, and it takes a certain percentage of those. So the more buffs that you have on your Death Knight at the time that you cast Raised Dead, the more powerful that your Ghoul's going to be. Now, the Ghoul isn't that powerful, but it'll definitely increase your DPS by a factor of 1 to 1.5k. So if you get to pop one off maybe 3 times within a lengthy fight, for Ghoul's alive for 60 seconds, do the math, average it out, you get maybe another 180,000 damage done. This is especially useful in arenas, just because everyone's going to try to CC you as the DPS that they go for your healers typically. Great thing about this is that even if you're CC'd, well, if you've made a conscious effort to keep your Ghoul up as much as possible, at least something's going to be doing damage to your opponents. And that's the end of my video, guys. Feel free to leave comments and ask me any questions about these macros, or just give me some ideas on new macros. Again, my name is Demascus, and thanks for dropping by.